Hey there, friends. I like to talk a lot on my channel about how we are all equal. I don't mean from an equity standpoint. Everybody's not getting a trophy as far as I'm concerned. I'm talking about we have equal opportunities. If you don't want to do something, that's on you. I'm going to do it. Don't get mad when I succeed and you don't, and vice versa, right? Same goes for titles. I look at every single person. You might have chose a different road than me. Doesn't make me better than you. Doesn't make you better than me. If you have a title and I don't have a title, we are still equal, right? I just didn't want to be a doctor. If I am a manager of a company, doesn't make me better than you because you didn't want to be a manager. We just chose different paths. Same goes for judges. I find sometimes judges are put far too on a pedestal, way up there, and people just assume that they're awesome people, hard workers, and the salt of the land. Not really. On January 31st, 2024, U.S. District Court Judge Susan P. Waters published an opinion on the motion to dismiss the gun-free zone case in Billings, Montana. She found the Gun-Free Zone Act to be constitutional. You'll remember this case, Gabriel Metcalf in Billings, Montana. We talked about this at length a few months ago. His home is across the street from an elementary school. The school was not in session while he was carrying outside of his home. Very important that we talk about the fact that the school was not in session. The school was a week or two away from being in session. Plus, at one point when he was reported to have had a gun on his own property, by the way, it was also on a weekend. So school would not have been in session anyway. Judge Waters had to reach and stretch to find any historical analog similar, even closely related to the Gun-Free School Zone Act. She finds the prosecution brief to be inadequate. So she creates her own interpretation of the historical record to find an analog. Now, I got this article from AmmoLand, by the way, so you can go check it out on your own. The judge cites one colonial law from the Constitution of Delaware in 1776, which she says forbids firearms within 1 mile of a polling place for 24 hours before an election and 24 hours after the election. Then she cites 3 Reconstruction and post-Reconstruction laws that forbid the carrying of weapons close to polling places during elections. Now the judge then jumps from the polling place prohibitions to claim buffer zones around schools, which are in effect every day of the year, are close enough of a law to justify constitutionality of the Gun-Free School Zone Act. She relies heavily, get this, on claiming that school shootings are recent sociological phenomena that require a new response. Well, by her claiming that school shootings, quote unquote, are a new phenomena, by her stating that this is a new phenomena, bet you can't get that song out of your head now. By her stating that this is a new phenomena, she is literally stating that it has nothing to do with Bruen, which she's trying to refer to, and dealing with history or tradition. So by her own speech and comments and words that this is a new phenomena prohibits it from being taken into consideration with Bruen in history and tradition. So she's debunking her own stupid little story right here. And a little bit of a side note I want to make right here. She's referring to, no doubt, because this is where it all comes from, the Gun Violence Archive. This archive that has these inflated numbers that are not even close. I will have a video out tomorrow where I debunk all of the lies of the Gun Violence Archive. But my point is, a lot of these people, including now this judge, are trying to use a faulty database to now put laws into place. Now, I can't say this judge used this archive, but this is literally the only place that you can find this many claims of school shootings. Even FBI and a bunch of other numbers out there don't even come close to what the Gun Violence Archive. If the Gun Violence Archive was accurate, school shootings would very much appear to be a phenomenon. But the fact that that's faulty data, we all know better. In fact, they know better too. The judge likely knows, unless she hasn't read into these. You can just go case by case and look at these Gun Violence Archive incidents and tell that they're not legitimate. But maybe she just took it at face value and said, oh, well, the numbers look great. This is clearly a political judge that is simply out to do the bidding of the anti-gun movement, because she's not done her own research. In fact, when she goes on to talk about not just the polling place data, but using this old information from the 1700s that does not apply, how does it make any sense to look at data from the 1700s and state that they're specifically talking, no mention about schools, specifically talking about polling places. And just because we use polling places now, or excuse me, schools as polling places, somehow that 1700 ruling would apply today to schools? Wait a minute. So you're telling me that a 200 and something, almost 300-year-old ruling that only mentioned polling places, never mentioned schools, somewhere along the way over the next 250 years, which is probably more recent than that old, we just decided to start using schools as our polling places. So you mean to tell me that because we have federal elections one time a year, that it would be okay to apply that same stupid logic of polling places to the other 364 days out of the year just because? So the polling place itself, again, it states 24 hours before and 24 hours after. So even if you made that jump, that the schools would also be considered the polling places that this historical ruling applied to, then it would only apply using her own data that she's supplying to 24 hours before the election and 24 hours after, not 365 days out of the year. So my point in all of this is that we have a very bad habit, and I say we, I'm speaking in generalized terms, that the general public has a habit of taking somebody like a doctor, a lawyer, a judge, I don't know, an executive or whatever, and putting them on a pedestal because they make some kind of wild assumption that this person has really worked hard, and because they are in a position of recognition, somehow or another they have progressed farther in life than everybody else. That is not true. Clearly this judge is trying to impress her cocktail party friends. Clearly she has a group of individuals that she is probably getting high five from. Probably around Christmas time, they got a little tipsy over some cheap wine and some cheap bourbon and said, hey girl, good on you. You know, look what you're doing over here. You know, you're doing this for the safety of the children. And then they cite the stupid little gun violence archive lies out there. I'm glad to see this judge provide the examples that she provided because they are all inaccurate, which means the appeal process that ends up taking place, because it will be appealed, will certainly win. Because there's no way, if this is her argument, there's no way using the polling place argument that any of this will stand. So this judge will definitely be seen as a fool, and I'm curious to know what her new little cocktail friends are going to think after she's essentially bitch slapped in this ruling and told to go kick rocks.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
It's over!